and the legions shall embark upon a great crusade.
Welcome to Trident Wargaming, a podcast dedicated to all aspects of tabletop wargaming. Your hosts are Bill and Andy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Trident Wargaming. This is episode 11, and I'm your host Bill. And today we have a special guest for you, the man who brought us the Great Crusade books, Cenception, Conflict, and Compliance. I'd like to introduce King Fluff.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us as well. Yeah, I had the privilege of actually picking up these 3 Great Crusade books that you worked on, and I believe from reading online you were working on 2 more. Is that right?
Well, yeah, it initially started off as 2. It's kind of expanded a little bit since then. The project originally was kind of just 1 book, but as the kind of momentum with the Horus Heresy books kind of kept up, and they kind of introduced more kind of fringe xenos kind of races, my project obviously got bigger as well. So yeah, what started off as 1 book became 3, and then there was kind of more stuff coming out through the Primarchs novels. So I've got 3 planned, with a 4th one kind of in the wings as well. So it's a total of 7 books currently.
Oh wow, that's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah. It's grown a lot since kind of sitting down thinking, oh, what would the lair do? How would they be? What would they look like? What kind of weapons would they have?
No doubt. Yeah, for anyone who isn't familiar with the Great Crusade books, these are Xenos rules and Great Crusade rules for all the, Xeno races that the Imperial forces encounter throughout the books. And they provide you with unique army lists, and there are some special rules and war gear selections as well. And some of them are actually really, really cool. Like, I'm definitely looking forward to dabbling. I'm kind of torn between some Nephilim or Megarachnids, or even doing some of the other ones, like even the Orcs look really, really interesting as well. So
yeah, it was it's been a, I don't want to use the word slog because it has been a slog, but it's been a pleasure. But it's everything's from the ground up really. So when I started the project, it was kind of off the back of having. It was even before Forge World had released their Horus Heresy rules. So this is off the back of a fan rule set that Stuart McInnes was writing, that we were all using as the precursor to playing Heresy, kind of way back when, must be 12 years ago, or perhaps even longer than that now.
Oh, wow.
And we were playing events, and we were playing kind of through the storyline from kind of the very start of the Heresy right the way through to the Battle on the Vengeful Spirit. So we played the whole kind of storyline through.
Oh, wow.
And as part of that, we kind of collected different army. I mean, I did a Space Wolves army and a Mechanicum army, but obviously this was way before any of the Bad War kits had come out. So we were literally making everything from scratch based on the artwork from Collected Visions. So it was very much ground up. And after we played through all these games and we kind of got towards really the end of the campaign, I think it was probably played over about 3 years, I think. I was getting to the point where the kind of Marine versus Marine, Bolter versus Power Armor thing was kind of feeling a bit done for me. So I was kind of postulating, okay, so what would happen now if, like, we kind of turned on its head and had something new, but not necessarily kind of just Orcs and Eldar and stuff that kind of had been well covered by Games Workshop and Forge World, but other things that were kind of introducing new themes and new kind of aesthetics to the hobby. So that's kind of where I took it really. And as I said, I started off with, at the time, the novels that were out. Megarachnids and Lair the Lair were the first ones because they're in the Fulgrim novel. And they really captured my imagination for kind of, well, these guys are amazing. They can go toe to toe, well, snake body to toe with Marines.
Yeah.
They've got all these cool weapons. They can take a lot of punishment. They're also very adept and changing to different theatres of war. So you get some that fight underwater, some that fight in the air. So the possibilities were really, really good. So they were a great kind of inroad to the project, really. Then kind of rolling on from that, there were other kind of novels that gave loads and loads of information about different races. So writing an army list and writing special rules and stuff was very easy. Some were less so, such as the Kayla Kid, which are literally a paragraph. I can't remember which novel it is now. False Gods, perhaps, where it literally talks about how they are that fearsome that Horus doesn't even want to fight them face to face. He wants to just bomb them from space. So they kind of trick them into to be able to kind of wipe them out. So that one was more difficult because it was more kind of postulating on the kind of themes that were covered, but also looking at other things that were covered in the novels and using those as kind of a benchmark. So they were a bit more difficult to write, but others have kind of come really easily. I mean, some of the stuff I'm writing in a minute, I'm writing the Crave and the Gardenal, and obviously those two races have almost a novel kind of dedicated to them as a counterpoint to the Marines. So they've been a lot more easy to kind of put together than some of the other stuff. But obviously, the more Forge World or Battle Library put out there in terms of alien races, then the more kind of opportunity I've got to write more.
Yeah, no doubt. I know the Crave, for anyone who hasn't read it, it's covered in the Lord of the First Dark Angels book. So,
yes, yeah.
It's a good book, good read. I definitely did enjoy it. So,
yeah, and I think, I mean, in their kind of inception, they're very similar to the Nephilim in terms of enslaving humans and things like that. But
yeah,
having kind of dug down into that a bit more, they're going to be probably more akin to the Tyranids than perhaps the Nephilim are, and perhaps the Megarachnids are. I mean, everyone kind of thinks of the Megarachnids as kind of Tyranids, but I'd say they're probably more like Tau than they are Tyranids, but kind of with that bioweapon type thing in there as well. So it's like a half and half. But yeah, the Crave they'll have some really cool stuff in terms of being able to enslave different armies or being able to use different armies as allies or parts of different armies as allies, kind of like the Nephilim, but they'll also have the opportunity to kind of be, you know, that kind of psychic powerhouse that they are and have that kind of hive mind element as well.
That's awesome. So with these books and like the campaign, obviously you guys have gone through some pretty decent like play testing and going through all the races. And do you have a lot of guys who are running a bunch of the Xeno races over in UK or?
Well, the playtesting kind of I tend to be a bit of a one-man show to some extent, and especially over the last kind of year or so, where that's kind of been a necessity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the kind of earlier stuff was the kind of concept and the playtesting kind of happened at the same time, just because it was easier to do it that way. And then after that's kind of bedded in, it kind of moved more towards the writing and then the playtesting. But yeah, I mean, we run an annual event in the UK called Xenocide. So it's dedicated to being able to play games set in the Great Crusade. So you can have an expeditionary fleet. So any Imperial army so you can use any legion, or you could use Sisters of Silence, or you could use Custodes, or you could use, or we've got rules for rogue traders and stuff as well. So any of those kind of factions versus aliens. So what we do is we ask all the players to bring 2 armies with them, and it's usually an Imperial army and a Xenos army. So then we'll do a random blind pick. So one game you might play with your Imperial army, the next game you might play with your Xenos army, unless you want to reach an agreement and work it out without doing a blind pick. But it gives everyone the opportunity to kind of play something new, play something different. And it also, kind of in the inception of it, was to kind of get back that hobby excitement, as it were. So, with the Horus Heresy, I know a lot of people kind of lament about the release dates and the release schedules and how slow it is and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, you can kind of pick an army off a shelf, paint it, and put it on a table. What I really enjoyed about the Heresy when I started it was the fact that you couldn't do that. It was literally, you had to kind of take a very small piece of inspiration, whether it was a piece of artwork or a description, and then create something from that to put onto the table. And for me, that was a really exciting part of the hobby. So doing the Xenocide events, it was a case of, we kind of thought, well, we can give the inspiration in terms of the books, the rules, the descriptions in the texts, and obviously the novels themselves. And then people can kind of be inspired by that and hopefully put together something that's exciting for them and they can feel really proud of at the end of the day, and then put that on the table and play with it.
Oh, definitely. No, the whole concept of it sounds really, really cool. I like the modeling potential with it myself, like, especially now with the age of 3D printers being so good. There's so many ways you could do it. Like, I know there's a ton. I've actually gone through and read through these books, and like the Interrex and even the HUD, just from reading on the HUD from like the Iron Warriors novels. I want to make an army, and with 3D printers available and everything now, it's kind of based on descriptions and some artwork, being able to actually render and create your own force, and then be able to show up with rules and like have it as as deep as it goes for like the fluff, being able to explore Great Crusade rules, or just even special scenarios or missions and stuff. I just love the whole concept of being able to do that, and that Xenocide event sounds pretty top notch as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a very kind of fledgling thing, really. So we are still looking for more people to be involved, and the potential for it is huge. We could get those people involved, and certainly as people have obviously cleared their backlog of heresy models over the lockdown, hopefully they're looking for new projects to do. But with the 3D printing element, it does really open up a lot of avenues. And to be honest, it's the next thing we're kind of thinking about once the next, kind of alongside the next 4 books, really. Looking at possibly getting some like-minded people who are very talented in terms of creating digital files and kind of to generate kind of a body of work, really, that people can either pay for or that's free, and they can download it and print an army. I mean, obviously with our Xenocide events, there isn't really, apart from kind of the Orcs and the Eldar element, there isn't really anything out there that is that army. So the opportunity for people to kind of pick up models that they really like, that are from a third party seller, not just Games Workshop or Forge World, for them to kind of go, well, I really like that kind of aesthetic of those models of that army, so I'm going to pick those up and I'm going to use them as Interrex, or I really like those kind of mushroomy kind of composty things. They'd be really good for a Moog, for the Harud.
Yeah.
And you can kind of really mix and match models really from different ranges. But if we can kind of get in touch with designers who are interested in the project, who want to kind of work on those kind of races as a project, then that would open up a whole world of opportunities for players across anywhere, really, who want to kind of pick up the rules and want to play kind of Great Crusade era games.
Yeah, no, that's pretty sweet. I know. Just speaking of model range, there are so many opportunities, especially like what I've been finding with some of the Age of Sigmar ranges that have been coming out for like the Lair, and having those serpentine bodies from like the Daughters of Cain kits and stuff. I was just like, oh man, there is really so much potential. It's the sky's the limit to be able to bring and create almost anything you want, really. And to be able to bring on to the tabletop, I really enjoy that aspect of I guess like artistic freedom that's involved with the books. So
and it's something I thought about when writing the books, really, was that there are obviously similarities. I mean, the Lair, for example, it's implied that they are Slaneshi worshipping aliens, and the kind of their physical form kind of mimics what Fulgrim becomes as a kind of demon prince later on. So with particularly those in mind, it was a case of looking at what was out there. I mean, they were written before the is it Melusai, the snake ladies, were released, but there was already a precedent in the range for that kind of look. So working with the orcs, there's a lot of it comes from the text. Because the same with all the races, the starting point is not looking at the codex and kind of going, well, okay, well, what have they got? What models are there? Okay, well, I'll give them a buggy and I'll give them a death copter and all that sort of stuff. It was very much looking at what is represented in novels to really kind of get an immersive kind of experience of you're refighting that battle from the novel. So with like the orcs, it was kind of writing them from what was seen in the books, but then also kind of being mindful of what was in the ranges, what's easy to get hold of in terms of models, and then using both those things in tandem really to create something that is kind of true to the text, but also not outside of the bounds of possibility of making for kind of any kind of experienced or new starting out hobbyist.
Yep. Yeah, I know for the orcs, I definitely was inspired kind of reading some of the rules for that prime work and looking at the new Gazgul Thraka model, and I was like, oh, these, it would work so good. It'd just be so perfect to be able to throw them on a cinematic style base and have them fighting, lunar wolves for like the Battle of Unalor or anything like that. Oh no!
If you're going Primarch, you've got to go much bigger than that. Much bigger than Gazgul Thraka.
Almost, I wonder what would be the next step up then. Almost.
Well, the one I've got on my desk looking at me is one of the new Age of Sigmar Gargants.
Oh yeah.
So you talk. I mean, I think with Wolf of Fire and Ash, when you've got the Primarch who's in the middle of that planet, and he's kind of facing off against the Emperor and Horus, he picks both of them up in his hands. So you're talking huge, enormous orc, and I think the one that the Ultramarines fight as well on Thoas. He was massive as well. But I mean, it's one of those things that are open to interpretation. So some people see big. I mean, when you talk to people about Titans, then they kind of go, "Oh, they're bigger than the Empire State Building." And when you look at the actual stats, they're not actually quite that big, and the head's about the same size as a car. So scale is it's not something we worry too much about. And again, it's letting your imagination run wild and kind of go, okay, well, that would be a really cool thing to play with.
Yeah, definitely. I guess in terms of just for general gaming, like how is it in the UK in terms for just Heresy? I know looking online, there seems to be just a massive amount of players in the UK, especially for Heresy and some of the other events that I've been seeing. Do you notice like that it's quite large and still robust, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of shrinks and grows. It's very difficult at the minute with the pandemic to know kind of how many people have stayed with the hobby or how many people have kind of put it to one side for now, or they've picked up other things that are easier to do kind of in a family group or a smaller group. But yeah, I mean, the Heresy, generally speaking, has always been pretty healthy. I'm quite lucky because I live fairly close to Nottingham HQ, so around where I am, there's always been a fairly good Heresy community, and there are various pockets around the country where players tend to kind of gravitate towards, and those pockets tend to move as well. So if there's, I'm not sure what the 40k kind of event scene is like, but certainly for the Heresy event scheme, that people will travel fairly big distances to go and play a game or go and play for a weekend. It tends to be more about the kind of the camaraderie and the meeting up of old friends than it is about kind of turning up with an army to smash face for the weekend. So I think it's slightly different. So I think certainly with the Heresy scene, because it didn't necessarily start off as a Games Workshop Forge thing, it was a community thing that was kind of taken on board. I think it's always had that kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say standoffishness, but it's always had that kind of separation from church and state. So I think regardless of how or what happens in terms of releases and kind of updates and FAQs and all that sort of stuff that people tend to kind of focus on, I think there'll always be a fairly good heresy community, because those stories are good. Those kind of opportunities to meet friends are always good. So I think they're the things really that keep heresy players going.
Yeah, no,
and you know, shiny model syndrome and things.
I definitely agree with the community statement. That, realistically, things have been a little slow, I guess, on the Forge World front. But thanks to yourself and guys like Tom, who's bringing out Mournival, and then Andrew, who's bringing out the other versions of the Xenos 30k rules from the Aussie 30k group. It's guys like you who are really keeping 30k alive and fresh and providing a lot of alternative content for players out there. So honestly, a big thanks to you guys for doing that, because it's
thank you, thanks,
because it really does keep it fresh. I know locally here, we banged out quite a few leagues, some narrative, some more competitive orientated, and we're now at the point where we really want to try and start incorporating a lot of these alternate rules and fan rules, just to really have fun with it and start exploring all the different ways to be able to play our games and really go deep immersion for special events and campaigns, if you will. And I know myself, I've been really excited to share the content with the community, locally as well, from these Great Crusade books, because there are a lot of people who are not really sure, or they haven't heard of it, and then as soon as I start talking about it and showing them there's rules for all these races, check this out, I know some guys just start to run away with it. And again, touching base with the 3D printing, it's just it's starting to become more obtainable, I think, than it would have been maybe even 5 years ago. So it's exciting times here for sure.
Yeah, I mean that was always kind of not a criticism, but it was always the kind of main concern with doing something that is kind of so off the beaten track, was that it makes it unattainable for people to kind of get involved with. But yeah, like you said, with 3D printing now, and the fact that even if you haven't got a 3D printer, and even if you can't design your own STLs, there are services out there where you can commission people to design stuff for you, and there are services out there that they'll print stuff for you as well.
Yep.
So yeah, potentially you could print out a bespoke army for probably about the same amount of money it would cost you to kind of put out a Legion force, but you'd have something that is yours, unique, something that you can kind of really take ownership of and kind of really enjoy putting on the table.
Definitely, and it's something that more than likely people have never seen before, which is cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, and to be honest, it's quite nice to to kind of see when you put something down and people go, that looks really cool. What does that do? And what does that do? And what's that weapon? And when you start going through it, you kind of start to see the horror dawning in their eyes that, actually, this isn't going to be a walkover. This is going to be quite a hard fought game. That's quite nice, because it means that as my job has been done well, in that that these forces, these armies, can go toe to toe with Legion armies, and they will perform just as well as any of the other forces in the Horus Heresy kind of collection from Forge World. And that was very much the intention, was that these would be as usable as anything else, and people wouldn't feel as though they were kind of having to work to a disadvantage because they enjoyed the collecting and the modelling and the painting aspect. They will be able to compete in terms of the playing a game.
Yeah, definitely. I know, going through some of the different Xeno races in all three books, they definitely have the tools to give Marines a run for their money. And I do enjoy that, because even in the books, right, it wasn't just a complete walkover. They definitely had some hard fights in those novels. So it definitely brings that kind of thought process right into hard copy rules. So no, that's wicked.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought when kind of reading the novels that they were from kind of the perspective of a remembrancer. That, you know, things like, you know, when there's very glib statements where, you know, it talks about, oh well, the Blood Angels and the Lunar Wolves and the Emperor's Children wiped out the Mega Arachnids on Murder. So okay, that's fair enough. But the reason they were on Murder was that they were an invasionary force sent to attack the Interrex. But you wouldn't send your entire planet population to go and attack another planet. It's going to be an army. So somewhere, there is the Mega Arachnid homeworld kicking around, full of, you know, new Mega Arachnids that at some point could pop up. So the kind of the longevity of some of the things is actually really good because, you know, at some point, you know, you perhaps, you know, when I retire, I might have time to write kind of 40k rules for some of the races that are still around and might still be kind of doing the circuit.
Oh, that'd be great. Are you able to share any insight or sneak peek info about what some of the upcoming books are going to be about?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So the 4 books I've got planned so far. So the order might change depending on what gets finished first because I'm writing them kind of together, which isn't how I wrote the first 3. So there was a sequence, but these are kind of being written as a holistic lump. So one of the next books is going to be called Dominion, and this is taking on kind of trying to take something good from the whole pandemic experience. And obviously we've not been able to play games with people for, you know, ages. So I was kind of thinking on that and thought, actually, what would be really cool would be if you could have kind of like a one-player game that you wouldn't have to have another person, but you could have other people. So Dominion is going to be about reintroducing that element from the Rogue Trader rulebook, where you have flora and fauna on a planet which are all aimed to kind of killing you off, really. So that book is going to have it'll have a flora and fauna section, and the idea of it is that it's taking the big game hunt into the 30k universe. So you're going to have things like Malagras, you're going to have things like enslavers, you're going to have things like Psi vampires and stuff like that, where you're either hunting a singular large beast, or it might be a family group, or it might be a nest. You'll put together your team kind of a la Avengers. So it might be that you've got like a hunting party led by there's going to be a new console type for Legion forces, or it might be a rogue trader in a mech suit, or it could be an aspirant in a knight suit, or it might be a provost with a group of enforcers. And all these guys will be hunting down these creatures or groups of creatures, and it'll be using a new system to kind of generate both the kind of environmental effects and how much kind of resistance you're going to be meeting in terms of the flora and fauna on the planet. It'll also be using a concealed deployment system, so kind of blip counters.
Oh, that's awesome.
You won't know where things are until it's right on top of you. So, you know, they're in the ceiling kind of springs to mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you're gonna have kind of massive dinosaurs or you know, all sorts of kind of, or Katashan devils, that sort of thing. And you'll be hunting for those in like Arctic wastes or subtropical jungles or in the deserts. And then your mission objective will to be either to capture or kill them. So you're either trophy hunting or you're kind of hunting under license for somebody else. But that's kind of the one player element. Obviously, on top of that, then you can have 2 other games, kind of game setups, where you've got a 2-player game where the creatures are then NPCs, and they can kind of be included in the game as like an extra element, or even a 3-player game where you've got sort of, could be Horus Heresy based or could be Great Crusade based, where you've got 2 armies fighting against each other, and then the 3rd player is then the planet kind of playing against you.
Well, that's very cool. An immersive death world, basically.
Yeah, absolutely, and kind of there seems to be a big popularity for Zone Mortalis at the minute, and obviously Zone Mortalis doesn't have to necessarily just be kind of corridors and rooms; it can be other stuff as well. So
that's true.
Zone Mortalis will feature quite heavily in the book. So yeah, it's kind of Rogue Traitor meets Kill Team meets Zone Mortalis meets Aliens and possibly Avatar as a kind of big mix together.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds very, very cool.
Yeah, and one of the other books then is Decimation. So that is very similar in the format to the other 3 books. Well, the first 2 books. So they're going to get full army lists for the Avenians, which were the population of Shrike that the who was it? It was the Thousand Suns, the Space Wolves, and the 3rd Legion that I can never remember who it is. Death Guard, possibly?
I think it's Death Guard, from what I remember.
Yeah. So they'll be a full army list, and I'm really excited about those because the idea of these big flying reptilian bird things and having kind of almost like a chariot situation where you got like archers on the back and stuff. It's quite exciting in terms of an army. So you've got those. You'll also have the Gardnal, who are the kind of those guys are going to be really useful because they're going to be almost like a template for techno barbarians. As I'm part of the Unity Before Heresy blog, and quite a lot of what we're doing there is looking at all the fringes of and the stories around kind of the main story arc. So when the Gardnal are written, they're going to be very much or very similar to what a techno barbarian horde might look like without all the warp magics and stuff. So they're going to be really cool. So yeah, big tripod Titans again. 3D printing is going to come into its own with that one, but you're also going to get kind of like the almost like the Penitent Engine kind of mech suit situation where your HQ is kind of, and it's a gestalt of lots of different earlier Lords of Gardnal. So you'll get kind of probably more like an in-game effect that is linked to the throw mechanicum that the Knight Scions use, but there'll be more of a game effect to that. You're gonna have the Crave as well. So you're talking Bio Titans, kind of Alpha Thralls, Hive Root Mines, the ability to kind of take control of other armies, so using them as allies, possibly actually in-game kind of effects where you can take control of the enemy. What else are in that one? I've had to write notes because I've got so much floating around in my head.
Oh, no doubt.
It's very hard to kind of record it all in one go. So they were also going to do Eldar Raiders. So this will be the Eldar that we've seen in the novels, which aren't Exodites. So it will kind of probably be kind of halfway between kind of Dark Eldar and Eldar Corsairs. It'll be kind of the more brutal side of the Eldar that we've seen. Because obviously in terms of the novels, we've not really seen Craftworld Eldar at all. You've got Eldrad Ulthran, who's kind of popping up now and again, who pops up with an avatar at a certain point. But in terms of the actual forces of the Eldar, we've only ever seen kind of Void Raiders and kind of the elements that the Space Wolves and the Salamanders have fought off. So these guys will be. They're not going to be, Wave Serpents out of the Yin Yang or loads of Aspect Warriors and that sort of thing. They're going to be very pared down, but still very fast, very potent, but without all the kind of elements of 7th edition where, the Codex Eldar, it won't be those. It will be something completely different.
Well, that's awesome.
The other 2 races in the book, and this is going to be a big book as well. It's going to be probably much bigger than the first 3. So there's going to be the Selenar in that book. So they're going to be the kind of ultra mech gene rights. So you're going to have kind of gene bred, vat grown monstrosities, as well as the kind of sleek, kind of animalistic automata that they use. And then the last race in the book will be the Collegia Titanica. So they will be, before becoming the Adeptus Titanicus, it's the kind of almost separate entities that were each of the Forge World Titanicus houses. So very much like the Knight households are in 40k. That's how it'll be. But they're going to get fleshed out. So I'm looking at amending some of the rules for certain elements of Titans that, for me, I think, and it's the first kind of thing I've done in terms of rewriting stuff that already exists.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a change to the Void Shields. There's going to be a change to the functions of Titans. So again, it's going to be more like household rankings. So potentially, you could have a scoring Reaver Titan.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I mean, this is very much designed around looking at the army in two halves. So one half is going to be the Titans in terms of the God Engines, and kitting them out in a way that you can then play God Engines versus God Engines, but it makes sense. And this has kind of been a long way in the making, really. I've done some playtesting with Horus Heresy Birmingham, which is a Horus Heresy group, looking at playing this rule set, but using Adeptus Titanicus models instead of using the 28mm models, and just trying out the rules and seeing how it works. And it works really well. It creates more of a tactical nuance to using Titans. I've got quite a big Titan collection, and I feel really sad when you put them on the table and they don't move and they just stand there and they become static gun platforms, and it doesn't feel as though you're really playing with them. It just feels like you're rolling dice for them. So creating something that is a bit more interactive. So, for instance, when your Titan is destroyed, you roll a dice to see whether the head gets jettisoned. If it does, then that becomes an extra game objective. So then you can start scoring points from recovering your Princeps and your Moderati from your wrecked Titans.
Oh, that's very cool.
But as a side to that, it will also be fleshing out the stuff that has kind of been touched on from Forge World in terms of the Secutari, but looking at really kind of exploring that. So looking at how what equipment they'd have, what additional troops they'd have, kind of looking at the tanks that might be available to them. So looking at the potential of having, say, super heavy tanks with, say, an Ursus Claw on the back for grappling Titans, or for a tank with a that's specifically designed for stripping Void Shields off a Titan, so that your ground troops are effectively aiding your Titans, and your Titans are effectively supporting your ground troops. So it makes that relationship a little bit stronger rather than just kind of being only in name, really.
Yeah.
So that's going to be quite a big chunk of book, because obviously with the different Titan types, and then obviously all the additional troops and the additional tanks and things. So yeah, Decimation is going to be quite a chunky tome, I think.
Oh, it sounds amazing.
The other two books I'm currently planning as well are going to be set in the same kind of universe, but they'll be for other game systems. So one of the books is called Deicide, which is or will be an expansion to Adeptus Titanicus. So it'll be a case of including Orc and Eldar Titans in the book. It'll also be including larger creatures from different races. So, for instance, the Gardenal and the Crave will both have Titans that can be used in the system. I'm also looking at the Carven of Cathellan, which were the world rocks that were generated by the kind of shaman people on the planet, but then they were as big as Titans. So the idea of these kind of like an orc idol, but the same size as a warlord Titan, kind of battering a Titan seems quite fun.
No doubt. That sounds awesome.
Then I'll also be including things like the massive saurians from Pythos as well. So huge dinosaurs, massive rock people, squidgy, part warp, part flesh Titans, and three-legged Titans, all kind of thrown in with the Gargants and the kind of Revenants and Warlock Titans and stuff of the Eldar. But the Eldar Titans are going to be more kind of strongly based in the old kind of clans rather than it being kind of craft world Titans. So, there's going to be other elements there as well. And the last one I'm planning currently is I'm currently writing a new version of Battlefleet Gothic for Heresy. It's called Imperialis Armada. So I've done all the design work for it in terms of the ship cards and the weapons cards. I'm just finishing on the rule book. But once that's done, then I'm going to kind of transfer that into the Great Crusade era. So then you've got kind of ships for the Kalakid, and you've got ships for the Mega Arachnids and the Lair. Because obviously a lot of these races were all void-faring species. So, and we definitely know categorically the Mega Arachnids had space traveling capacity because the Interrex took it away from them. So the idea then is that you can fight void battles. It's a completely different system to Battlefleet Gothic. It's more akin to Adeptus Titanicus, but obviously with quite a lot of changes in terms of how the weapons work and where your arcs are and stuff like that. So then you'll be able to play void battles against kind of orc ships or Crave ships or whatever you want to do. If you want to refight a void battle between the Dark Angels and the Crave, then you can do that. If you want to refight Iron Hands versus the Gardenal, you can do that. If you want to, anything really, the sky's the limit. So it's when the kind of 7 books are done, it is going to be a case of anything that is kind of heresy, you can then also use Great Crusade. So there will be Adeptus Titanicus and Imperialis Armada, and then rules throughout the kind of 28mm tabletop stuff.
Well,
so that'll be kind of tied up really until they release more information about other armies. I mean, a lot of people were asking me about the Rangdan Xenocides. I was poised when Crusade was released and when Master of the First was released to do Rangdan rules, but they just never followed through on it. So we know as much about the Rangdan as we've ever done, apart from snippets of like they've got big worm-like creatures and stuff. So which is also referenced in another book as being part of the Men of Iron kind of setup. So it's like, well, is that or is that? And it's the confusion's still out there. I know they kind of like to keep us guessing about stuff, but the Rangdan, until they actually come forward and give us more information about what they are and what alien races are part of the collective and that sort of thing, it's hard to kind of put together a rule set that's going to work in terms of the fluff, because that's very much the anchor for everything that I've done, is that if it's in the novels, then you can look at how that works in comparison to other stuff that's represented in the novels, and you can kind of come up with an action plan of, well, they need to have this, this, and this. They need to do this, and then you can start writing special rules or kind of profiles for stuff. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened for the Rangdan. So unless that changes, that might be it then at 7 books.
Oh, that's crazy. Well, Forge World, if you're listening, please flesh out the genocides, because we need to know.
Yeah, or failing that, if you fancy doing a boxed game, perhaps Emperor's Children and Blood Angels versus the Mega Arachnids, then I'd be happy to kind of be involved in the project to kind of, usher in a new era. I mean, I think that's kind of the thing that everyone's talked about since they announced the Siege of Terror, in terms of, well, once the Siege of Terror is done, where do we go from there? Are we looking at going onto the scouring, or are we looking at going back and doing earlier stuff? And I think there's a growing call for them to kind of look, well, the scouring's not going to be massively different to 40k or a 40k flavoured version of 30k. So actually, perhaps going backwards might be the better option. So whether they're looking at kind of the civil wars on Terra for the establishment of the Imperium, so all the Thunder Warriors, Legio Cretaceous, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, the
Techno Barbarians.
Yeah, the Unification Wars would be really cool for sure.
Or whether they go Great Crusade. I mean, it makes sense with how the Primarch novels have hopped around the timeline, that it's open there to kind of go, well, we've done the Heresy, we've done the Siege of Terror, look at how far everyone has fallen from their points of grace. So we're going to go back to the very start of the story, and as everyone jumps on ships and disappears to Luna and disappears to Mars and then further afield, we're going to start looking at how that pans out, and we're going to look at all these crazy alien races that are out there and flesh them out. And that, I think that would be great to kind of really introduce new things and new flavour to the kind of heresy, to the Horus Heresy community. I mean, obviously I'm doing it just because I love doing it, but if it came out as an official capacity where that it was a company with model ranges and stuff like that, then that would be great.
Yeah, no doubt. I guess it'd be good, and it also kind of reinforces, like you were the pioneer, helping bring a lot of that stuff in the beginning. So it would definitely be kind of a cool setup for that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to see. I mean, I know from going to the Horus Heresy Weekenders that Tony Cottrell's he gets asked almost every kind of weekend, or was asked almost every weekender, what's happening with stuff, and he sort of said almost consistently that the Horus Heresy is, and always has been and always will be, Marines versus Marines. It's a civil war. That's what it does. That's what it is. So it would have to be something new and fresh outside of the Heresy for it to happen. But I'm sure at some point there might be. I mean, they've brought back squats for Necromunda. There are snippets of little things and little nostalgic things that they keep dripping in from other into other game systems. So possibly in the future we might see a Kayla Kid mercenary or something kind of crop up that is new and fresh. And I mean, Zotes have made a return and Ambles have made a return. So
it's true.
Who knows? We might see more kind of new things coming out, old things, new things. I don't even know which way that's supposed to go.
No doubt. Yeah, it is interesting to see just, I guess, where they're taking everything, right? Like, it's definitely all up in the air for us. Like, we don't know until it kind of happens. Speaking of, like, the uncertainty, I just want to kind of touch base a little bit on some of the rumors. I don't know if you're familiar or up to date with some of the rumors that have come out in the last little bit about the Horus Heresy 2.0 rumors of the black books being discontinued, or the new plastic sets and stuff like that. I have heard rumor of the plastic sets coming out later this year, like a starter style game, which sounds pretty cool. But
yeah, I mean, I think the kind of main release windows for stuff like that tend to be, what is it, like the middle to end of summer, and then October, November time for Christmas sales. So I guess if it's going to happen, it's going to happen kind of in one of those two windows.
Yeah, I know. I definitely, thinking about it, from a business point of view, the black books definitely take quite a bit of effort and resources to get going, considering all the writing that goes involved in it. I'm just wondering, like, your take on it. Do you think if the black books stopped, it would be a good thing or a bad thing, or?
And to be honest, I've been thinking about it quite a lot. Over kind of I started kind of thinking about it when Inferno was pushed back like 3 books. And it was just like this never ending. Well, when a Space Wars 1000 Suns happened, it kind of got pushed back and pushed back.
Yeah.
The black books are good. I mean, I'm a massive collector, so anything related, I'll try and snap it as quick as I can. And they're gorgeous. They're amazing books, and they're just amazing objects to have. I suppose the problem with it as a gaming resource is that, one, it's massive, two, it's heavy, three, you don't want to damage it, and four, the rules that get published in them potentially get rewritten through FAQs or get rewritten when red books get released. So in terms of a gaming resource, I think it makes absolute sense for them to move away from the black book format, and kind of focus on the kind of fluff and the narrative and the campaign element as a separate thing to the army lists and the rules. And I know that 40K's kind of moved in that direction as well, where it's very much like, here's your war zone, whatever, and here's your codex, and those two things interact, but they're not the same thing. And I think that's probably a wise decision. And what I would dearly like to see is that the OCD part of me would really like to see a book 10, just so there's 10 books.
I feel it,
because that seems like a thing to end on. It's like, that's the 10th book.
Yeah,
we've done 10 books. Ending on book 9 is a bit weird, but it is what it is. But I think having the opportunity then to kind of go, right, well, we've done 10 books. I mean, ideally, if it was me, I think I would probably have released not necessarily the Martian Schism, but something akin to that, so you can introduce the Dark Mechanicum, which is pretty much the only element now that's missing from the whole kind of collection of forces. Once you've got book 10 out, then I think moving to the same format, so it looks the same in terms of your kind of metal corners and your leather bound, but move towards like a campaign book, so you can then go back and you can look at new war zones, and you can perhaps revisit old war zones as well. So those people who are new to the hobby, who are coming in, can kind of go, right, well, I'm not going to buy Inferno because all the rules have been rewritten for that. So for me, that kind of feels like a waste of money. But I am going to go and buy Warzone Prospero, because actually that does make sense, because I can read about the Warzone and get excited about it, but then I can always pick up my army books as well. I think it will really depend on how they do the rule books. For me, I think what I'd like to see is a red book that covers the Loyalist Legions, and a red book that covers the Tracer Legions, and then kind of a red book that covers either Talons, but put more in it, and then kind of Cults, Militia, and like the Crusade Imperialis one. But have everything kind of duplicated across the Loyalist and Traitor one. So, you've got the rules for a Leviathan in the Loyalist book, and you've got rules for a Leviathan in the Traitor book, so that you're not having to have a kind of generic book and then the Traitor flavour and then the Loyalist flavour. That you've got kind of two books.
Yeah, that would
for me
nice.
That would kind of make sense, and I think a lot of people would be happy with that, because I think the big concern with, especially Heresy moving over to 2.0, and all the connotations for, well, that means that X, Y, and Z has to be redone in terms of the red books. If a second edition rule book's released and all the red books are re-released at the same time, that's going to be really helpful for players. But I think what a lot of players are concerned about is that it's going to go the way of Necromunda, in that instead of you having kind of to take one book with you to play, you then got to take like 6 books with you to play.
Yeah.
Or you've got to kind of rely on Battlescribe or Quartermaster, or you've got to rely on literally just like photographing pages or photocopying pages to take with you to a game. I think lots of people want to take the books with them, but they also don't want to take. And if players are like me, I can't retain that level of information in my head. So having a book there is invaluable, because actually, while someone's doing something, I can be looking at what I want to do next and looking at the special rule and what the connotations for that are. And having a book there is really invaluable for that. So if they do kind of keep I think people have compared it to the Adeptus Titanicus releases, insofar as you got your main rule book and your kind of cards and stuff are equivalent to the army books that happen with Heresy, and then each of the campaign books then give you a slightly different way of playing, or it gives you all the background and history to the games that you might want to play. That would be ideal. But I think keeping the kind of Heresy look and the Heresy feel, it's always felt kind of boutique. It's always felt kind of more special than, say, a Codex. It's nice to have that kind of leather-bound book with the metal corners. So if they keep that element to it, I can't imagine many people would be too upset about that. And obviously, plastic box sets. Who doesn't like a plastic box set? Who doesn't like kind of working with plastic on models? But a starter set would be cool. I think the name starter set has those two meanings of it's encouraging new players, but also that there's something to move on to. So if that's then followed up with other plastic kits, that would be great. And I think it's going to be how Heresy and 40k dovetail together. I know there was talk at one point of the plastic Mechanicum range becoming part of the Heresy setup, and vice versa. So you'd be able to use Heresy Forge World stuff in your Adeptus Mechanicus army. That then would open up, the potentials for plastic Mechanicum stuff as well, which would be new for 40k players, and it would be really convenient for 30k players as well. And I think the thing that Heresy's always suffered from was lots of people kind of look at it and kind of go, it's really expensive because I've got to get everything from Forge World. I can't buy it from a third party retailer. I'm always paying kind of the top money for resin.
Yeah.
So the more plastic kits that are out there, the more accessible it's going to make it for people. And that can only be a good thing, if it's encouraging more people that have read the books and have fallen in love with the setting to then kind of go, well, yeah, okay, now's the time. I can pick up an army for, 300 quid that I can play smaller games with, kind of Centurion games, or I can play Zone Mortalis games with. Yeah, I'm on that now. I'll pick it up and I'll play some games. And I think once people start down that path, it kind of the addiction kicks in, and it makes people then kind of go, well, I've got that, but I'd really like that, and I quite like that as well. And it kind of grows itself almost.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, cool. Because then it snowballs. You need more and more, and next thing you know, you have 10k worth of Heresy armies, and you're ready to play big games, which is always good.
Yeah, I mean that when I started, it was I started with Thousand Suns because I got a 40k Space Wolf army, and I kind of really liked the Space Wolf aesthetic and the Space Wolf story. So then I was interested in the counterpoint to that in terms of, well, what's their rival? So kind of you get on board with the Thousand Suns, and then their kind of background really captured my imagination. So the Thousand Suns were really my first Heresy army, and then kind of as things got released and things kind of snowballed, I was picking up stuff, and then I changed my mind in terms of what kind of army I wanted it to be. So then I got loads of spare stuff, which then became another army, and I'm now sitting on I don't even know what is it. I'm now sitting on Night Lords, Imperial Fists, Space Wolves, Thousand Suns. For now, and I'm sure that will change as we go down, and I'll have even more. But coupled with the idea of having like 1,000 points ish for each of the Xenos races that I'm writing as well, it's a big snowball.
Yeah.
it's getting bigger on a daily basis.
Yeah, no doubt. I definitely feel it as well. Like myself, I'm sitting on 3 armies. I started with Iron Warriors, slid over to Space Wolves because I just love the Space Wolves, their aesthetic and the stories. And then I ended up starting up a Word Bearers Force too. So it's
it's so easily done, isn't it? You just kind of they release something. You go, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah,
it doesn't fit my army, so I forget that, and so you end up with like building an army around one model, which I don't know whether that's just a kind of frailty of mind on our parts, or whether it's superb marketing and advertising on their parts, but I think it's probably half and half, really.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. That's kind of the nice thing about the heresy system itself is, like, believe it or not, the word bearers, I actually got inspired from reading the books. After I read First Heretic, I was like, yeah, I kind of want a word bearers army now.
I think one of the key things, I think, for the heresy for me, definitely, with the kind of narrative element of it, is that it's quite tragic. Quite a lot of the armies are, they suffer from this tragic flaw, which is kind of built into them on purpose, and you kind of think that's, it's really sad when you look at like Argyle Tal and Khan and people like that, where they are these the kind of pinnacle of their legion. They are, the supreme heroes, and then they fall from grace so quickly and so heavily, and they become the bad guys when actually they've not necessarily done anything wrong apart from kind of follow what they've been told to do and follow what they've been programmed to do. And I've just finished reading the Valdor novel, and that really kind of ramps up the stakes of, like, well, who are the bad guys? Who are the good guys? It's hard to kind of come down on a side where you feel your moral compass should lead you. But, the Horus Heresy obviously is an extension of that, where you've got, the Primarchs doing what they think is right. And it's due to their kind of breeding, it's due to the level of information they've got from Malcador and the Emperor, and kind of whether that's on purpose or whether it's a manipulation, and they all kind of get kind of positioned to kind of, for it all to be inevitable, really. And having, I don't know whether I should say spoiler here, possibly, but having read Valdor, and the conversations they have around the Legio Cretaceous, and then the conversations they have around the Legio Astartes, and then the kind of the question hanging over what happens next, when you start coupling that together with the Master of Mankind and start thinking, actually, the Horus Heresy, is that by accident? Is that on purpose? Is it, the whole kind of thing just kind of becomes this massive kind of swirl of intrigue. And I think that's for me, that's what, I mean, I haven't played 40k for 10, 12 years, and that's why, because those stories, those kind of mental kind of games that you can play with the background and the fluff, and how you can develop the character yourself in your own kind of mind's eye. I think for me, that's the reason why Heresy is always going to be kind of top of my tree in terms of kind of where I want to spend my time.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, Valdor was a great book. I definitely enjoyed reading that one. Actually, it was probably one of the better ones, just in terms of learning all the, I guess, the like prehistory of how everything kind of starts off, how everything was kind of set up.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to kind of go back even further. And I know in the book they make a point of sort of talking about how Valdor doesn't know where he came from or who he was.
Yeah.
But I'm sure in one of the novels it talks about who he was and where he was taken from, and it might have been Master of Mankind. But to kind of go back even further and look at kind of, I mean, it would be really good or really interesting as a kind of exercise to kind of go back and do almost like a potted history of the Emperor, of what he's been involved in, because obviously the Emperor's around in the universe. He's around now, in our time, and he's doing something, or he's active somewhere. So it'd be really interesting for them to do kind of like, almost like, a book series of what the Emperor did and how he navigated humankind to the point of, him being able to be in charge of everything, and kind of tie that into real world events. I think that'd be really cool to kind of, because I know they've kind of done that with some of the other novels, but to kind of almost make that a little bit more blatant would be quite interesting.
Yeah, no doubt. Actually, that would be a really cool take. For sure.
So perhaps that's what Games Workshop and Forge World and Black Library need to do next. Is like nothing to do with like orcs and guns and Volkite and stuff. It's like let's see what the Emperor was doing as part of the Kennedy assassination, or let's see what he was doing as part of the fall of the Roman Empire, and let's chuck some historical novels out there, but just with him as a cameo in it all the way through.
That'd be neat, actually. That'd be a pretty interesting read, I'm sure. That would be neat. I just wanted, in closing, I just want to kind of touch base. So, obviously, we're going to provide links in the description for, keeping tabs up on what you're doing and following up with your books and whatnot. Do you have a projected date of when those books would be available in hard copy to order? You think it's something next year, or?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I know the Imperialis Armada, so the Horus Heresy version of the Void Warfare thing, will be done before the summer. So that will be, and that's going to be a free resource. So you can just go on, you can download the rulebook, you can download the ship cards, you can download the weapons cards, and you can print them off and play the game. So that you can just do that. The rest of the books, some are going to come quicker than others, so it might be that they don't all get released at the same time, that they're probably going to be dripped in. I would hope that the first book, whether it's either going to be Dominion or Decimation, would probably be out just before Christmas.
Nice.
Hopefully. And then I can kind of hopefully do the next one kind of over the kind of autumn-winter period and get the next one out. Because we, up until the pandemic, we were doing the Xenocide events in February every year, and we've had to move them around a little bit. But it would be nice to kind of get the next volume out, so there's new armies for people to use at the next Xenocide event. So hopefully that will be out before and give people enough time to kind of do stuff before next February.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
The Deicide one is going to be probably a little bit more problematic, because obviously coming up with a system that works alongside Adeptus Titanicus rules in terms of having flesh-based creatures versus things with subsystems and stuff, that's going to take a lot of head scratching. So that one's probably going to take longer than the others. But yeah, I mean, definitely, it's the research is all done for them. The next stage really is writing, kind of writing up an army list that is the basis for the entry, and then after that, then it's going to be a case of kind of putting together profiles and then doing a bit of playtesting and stuff at the same time. So yeah, I'd say kind of Decimation's probably a third of the way there so far. So yeah, hopefully it won't be too long. And then the Great Crusade version, Imperialis Armada, that's probably a little bit further off, because that's going to again require kind of the idea of looking at how the rule system works, but then also introducing new weapon types, new shield types, new, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So that's probably the furthest one away. But yeah, hopefully by sort of definitely by Christmas, I'd hope at least one would be out, possibly two. And I'm not precious about it. So if there is, I've got a Xenos of the Great Crusade Facebook group, and an Imperialis Armada Facebook group. So as I do things, I tend to drop things out into those groups for people to have a look at. So as each race is done, I'll probably be just kind of putting that out into the wild to let people have a play with it. And then if there are any glaringly obvious things I've missed, which sometimes that happens, and then people can kind of get in touch and sort of say, well, this doesn't work because of this, or this is wrong because of this, and why have you got Primaris orcs? Or not that I'm going to do that, but Yeah, so those groups are really useful. So if people want to join those groups, then they'll probably see stuff earlier on than when the finished document's done. Unfortunately, the program that I use doesn't allow me to kind of share it in that format before it's finished, because the way it's published, it then generates a PDF at the same time as it generates a hard copy. So it'll kind of just be a very rough and ready document that I can kind of post up and people can have a look at it and play around with it. But I know there's already people kind of hitting me up for when are the Crave rules being released? So yeah, they're going to be fairly soon, I think.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, yeah, no, definitely. I'll after this, I'll grab some of those links from you so I can post them up. So if people can, yeah, definitely. If you're interested in join those pages, it'll get you a little bit more info quicker, and then you can kind of watch the creative process in action. So
yeah, that'd be cool.
No, that's excellent. Well, thank you so much for spending, your time with us and kind of going over everything.
No, thank you.
It was definitely lots of info and enlightening to kind of see how the whole Great Crusade books and the whole journey, how it all kind of has gone, and to see where you're headed to. I'm looking forward to definitely checking out the work and digging into it once you're releasing it. So much appreciated.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome. And thanks guys for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Trident Wargaming. Build it, paint it, play it.